Today we are going to discuss the third level, the first chapter of Vista's supplementary textbook prescribed for 12th grade students studying in CBSE board. It's authored by Jack Finney. Jack Finney was an American author and he is best known for writing science fiction and thrillers. Jack Finney was born in 1911 and lived through 1995. Here, it is worth mentioning the fact that World War II was fought from 1939 to 1945. Now, you might be thinking, why did I mention the period in which Second World War was fought immediately after mentioning the period in which the writer Jack Finney lived? It is because it has something to do with this chapter, explicit or implicit. You must have guessed that the writer lived through a highly tumultuous and troublesome time of history. The world was in dire need of peace at that time. People wanted to escape from the harsh and bitter realities of day-to-day life, especially in those days. Now, naturally, the escapist mindset of the writer is reflected in this story. Now, what I mean by the term escapist? The word escapist or escapism is a tendency to escape or to go out from the bitter realities, from the rough and tough life of this world. Now, different people have got different mediums of taking an escape. Some people prefer pursuing their hobbies. Some people prefer listening to songs. Some other people, in order to escape from the bitter realities of life, they like taking long walks. Different people have got different ways. If you were to ask me, I would love to read good books. If we were to talk about the narrator would love collecting stamps, which was his hobby. But remember, all these things give us only a temporary refuge from the dark and bitter and difficult and tough realities of life. One cannot escape from the realities of life for a long time. Now, another fact worth mentioning before going into the details of this chapter is, as a general fact, although a lot can be understood about the mindset of the writer after reading their writings, but as students of literature of any language, sometimes it is very difficult to come out with an exhaustive and comprehensive conclusion of what was going on in the mind of the writer while writing a piece of literature. We can only speculate and come to conclusions after reading their writings. Now, this chapter is very much an example of it. The narrator has an unusual experience, a complete scientific explanation of which is difficult to be given. We can only make assumptions. But remember, one's personal experiences cannot be questioned. Let me reiterate this point. One's personal experiences just cannot be questioned. Well, instead of beating around the bush, let's dive deep into the chapter and understand what the chapter holds. There are two main characters in this story. One is the narrator, Charlie, and the other one is his psychiatrist friend. His name is Sam. With this viewpoint, let's understand what is there in this chapter. As the chapter opens, we see that the narrator insists that there are 3 levels at Grand Central Station, in spite of the fact that in reality there were only 2 levels. So everyone contradicts him. Everyone says that there are only 2 levels, but the narrator insists that there are 3 levels at the Grand Central Station. And he even gives a vivid description of how he happened to reach at the 3rd level. See how he describes. If you have the NCERT book, please turn with me to page number 2. And in one of the paragraphs, in the penultimate paragraph, in the second line, he says, I went down the steps to the 1st level. Then in the second line, we read, I walked down another flight to the 2nd level. I am not reading all the lines, but only the specific lines to make you understand what it says. And as we come to the next page, on page number 3, we read, I went down a short flight of stairs and came out on the 3rd level at Grand Central Station. So he narrates his personal experience of how he reached at the 3rd level. And as I said in the introductory part itself, that one's personal experiences cannot be questioned. So he gives a vivid description of how he reached at the third level. And then we read the things that he saw at the third level. Again, we will not read everything that he saw at the third level, but we will see some of the things. See what he saw at the third level. The rooms were smaller. All I could hear was the empty sound of my own footsteps. This is while he was going to the third level. There was no one else. Then what he saw there, the room was smaller, fewer ticket windows, and the information booth in the center was wood and old looking. And then as we read further, we see that there were open flame gas lights. And then we also read that there was a man who was pulling out a watch, a gold watch, from his vest pocket. Then again we read that everyone in the station was dressed like 1890 something. I never saw so many beards, sideburns, or mustaches in my life. So even their very appearance, the people at the third level, their very appearance was different from the present world. So the narrator is quite sure about it because he experiences them, he sees them. And at the end of this paragraph, we also read that he happened to have a glimpse of a locomotive with a funnel-shaped stack. So he gives a very detailed description of the things that he happens to see at the third level. And then we read some of his experiences in order to make sure he goes through a few experiences. Let's see at least 2 experiences that he goes through. To make sure, I walked over to a newsboy and glanced at the stack of papers at his feet. It was the World. Although the fact that the World had not been published for years, the World is the name of the newspaper that he happens to see at the third level. Now what it had, if you read the details of the text, if you read, you will understand that its lead story was President Cleveland. That's what we read. And later on, when the narrator comes back to the present world, he happens to find a copy of the newspaper with the front page in one of the public library files. It had the date of June 11, 1894. So these are some of the things that he experiences. Now, there is another experience that he goes through. He goes to the ticket clerk, and the ticket clerk refuses to accept his money. See what is the response. He says, that ain't money, mister. That means that is not money, mister. So it is because of the old currency and new currency. So he is quite sure that he is at the third level. Now, having experienced this encounter with the clerk, what does he do? He left the third level possibly the way he came. We read in one of the paragraphs, it says, I left the same way I came, I suppose. That means the narrator is almost sure that this was the same way that he had taken to reach the third level, and that the same way he is taking even to go out. Then we read that he bought old currency notes at a premium from a coin dealer. He tried to reach at the third level, but he is not able to reach again. Then he narrates this experience, he describes this experience to his wife and especially to his psychiatrist friend. But they never believe him. They only argue that it is his walking or wish fulfillment. It is his daydream, a sort of wish fulfillment. And when the narrator realizes that he is trying to be an escapist, what he does, he simply goes back to his old hobby, that is his philately. He starts collecting stamps. But the problem arises, the mysterious situation comes in reality when he happens to find that his own psychiatrist friend disappears. Sam himself disappears. And then the narrator gives us a description of what a first day cover is, because he happens to find a first day cover at his collection. He says that a first day cover is an empty envelope which a stamp collector puts himself after affixing a newly released stamp on the first day of its sale, of its release. Such a first day cover was found by narrator in his collection of first day covers. It should not have been there. That's what we read in the text. Someone had mailed it to his grandfather at his home in Galesburg, and we read that the postmark on it showed that it had been there since July 18, 1894. And we also read the details of the stamp. It was a 6-cent dull brown with a picture of President Garfield. Now when he opened it, instead of containing a white sheet instead of containing a blank page. What did the envelope contain? It had a letter which was written by Sam. What was written in the letter? We will not read the letter. It's given in a box in your book, but I will tell you the gist of the letter. Sam argues that he had found the third level at the station. He informed Charlie that he had been in Old Galesburg for 2 weeks. So Sam informs his friend, the narrator, that he himself had been to the third level, to Galesburg through third level for 2 weeks. And he asked Charlie and his wife to keep looking for the third level till they found it. And then we read that it is a definite proof for the narrator to continue his search for the third level. And not only he, but hereafter even his wife is accompanying him in looking for the third level at every weekend. That's what we read. Now we are both looking for it, both looking every weekend, because now we have the proof that the third level is still there. So with this proof, he starts looking for the third level, which creates all the more confusion. Now, here comes the end to this story. I think a very important lesson that we can draw from this chapter is that we should never try to be escapist. We should try to face the harsh and bitter realities of life. Because even if we try to escape, it's not going to work for too long. See, we should try to live a calm and peaceful life. We should realize that life is full of tensions and worries. If we are unable to overcome them, we tend to, or there is a possibility that we may become escapist and we try to take refuge in non-existent things or the things that do not exist. Well, I know that the letter written by Sam creates it's a source of confusion in this story. What could be the possibilities? How can we come to a conclusion that the narrator's experience and the letter written by Sam, both of these can be correlated and a conclusion can be drawn? Now let me know in the comment section all the possible explanations of the letter written by Sam to his friend Charlie, and how it could be possible in reality that there could exist a third level in spite of the fact that there are only 2 levels at Grand Central Station. If any further discussion is needed, I will come to you in another video and I'll explain the doubts. But before that, let me know your views in the comment section. Thanks for watching.